And this is part of our ongoing series of classes on how to make use of different spiritual tools, whether for spirit communication or for different purposes. In particular, today we are going over spirit boards. So before I get too into the class, let's just touch on the fact that no, it is not called a Ouija board. Every time I go to teach a class on the use or making of spirit boards, my kid goes, "Mom, they're called Ouija boards." I'm like, "Munchkin, you're 9. This is
And a Ouija board is actually a trademarked property of Parker Brothers.
Yeah.
Because they made it into a game. Because that seems like a really good idea to someone at some point.
Right. Preteens everywhere using a tool of spirit communication sans supervision or
What
training.
could possibly go wrong? Actually, funny story. A lot of things. We hear those.
Yes, some of those are associated with the use of spirit boards, more so after the movie Ouija came out. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that if the cultural connotations around a tool are negative, or in particular, recently negative, then there will be sort of an outbreak of negative experiences. It doesn't mean that the tool is inherently bad. It doesn't mean that the use of it is always going to have harmful repercussions. But if you get enough people thinking that something is so, then oftentimes it ends up behaving that way. It's almost like we all build this world together and we're all stuck with what we turn it into. On that note, so let's start off with the skeptic's corner versus the spiritualist corner. When we go over the skeptic's corner or the spiritualist corner and we walk through a couple different methods of using the tool, I obviously cannot represent every tradition out there. Some of them are closed. Some of them I'm not educated on because I don't know everything. And never will, which is actually one of the things I enjoy most about the world, is that there's always something new to learn. But in particular, even if I could, in the course of an hour, teach you absolutely everything I know about a spirit board, I certainly couldn't teach you everything there is to know about a spirit board. So I encourage you to continue your research on your own, and if you're going to make use of a tool as part of your regular everyday practice, you do so in as informed a fashion as possible. With that said, there's a lot of misinformation about this tool. There are websites dedicated to warning mothers that their children will use them to contact Satan and demons, and it's the gateway drug to Satanism. I'm not kidding. These websites exist. There are also websites out there that claim that Harry Potter is a way of seducing children into worshiping the devil, and that the lightning bolt on his head is a satanic S. So, there were people out there who were really paranoid about the practices of traditions other than their own. The use of a spirit board can absolutely weave into whatever tradition or path you're walking on, regardless of whether or not, it was originally part of it. I know a Black Catholic who uses one. In fact, this is the design that the Black Catholic prefers. For those of you who don't know, Black Catholicism is actually a worship of the opposing power to Yahweh, the adversary, via whichever name you want to use, with all the same trappings as Catholicism. So all those people out there going it teaches you how to worship the Lucifer. Well, it can be used in the worship of Lucifer. It can also be used in completely atheist self-exploration. It can be used by Christian witches. It can be used by pagan witches. It can be used by teenagers who are just fooling around at a slumber party, who are attempting to have a good time. I would just recommend that they remember to say goodbye when they're done. So, on that note, let's move into... I'm not going to go into the history of the spirit board because depending upon who you ask, it is either one of the oldest or one of the newest spiritual tools. It either dates back to ancient civilizations in the Fertile Crescent, or it was invented by a game company. And there really isn't enough cultural, anthropological evidence one way or another for me to sit here and be like, it is absolutely for sure from this culture. So I'm not going to. Unlike the tarot class, which the mythical history of tarot is complete bullshit, and we actually do know where those came from. Sorry, on that note. My recommendation, if you are going to use a tool, is always to treat it with as much respect as you can. And for each person, that's going to vary. Either it's going to be something that they keep in a box and only bring out on special occasions, or it's going to be something that sits on their shelf along with their game of Sorry and Monopoly, because that's the respect that they can attribute to a tool that has been associated with fun times for so long. I don't really care where you fall on it. Let's move into the how. In the Skeptic's Corner, it works very similar to meditative guided automatic writing. And one of the arguments that skeptics, atheists, agnostics, and secular witches make against there being any spiritual basis for the spirit board is that we know it can sometimes be guided by the subconscious of the people using it. When they've done blind studies of the use of spirit boards, when it's been examined by any kind of an independent party, one of the things that is found is that it does respond based on the knowledge and goals and sort of perspective of the person using it. And this is always used to sort of invalidate the use and say, oh, well, it's not being guided by the spirits, it's being guided by the people there, and we can tell because if we flip it upside down with them all being blindfolded, then they still move it to where they think the letters are. Or we know that it's being guided by the subconscious of the people there because we fed them misinformation before they used it, and they moved the planchette based on the misinformation. Okay, sure. But the same thing could be said of tarot, that it often tells you things you already know, and that doesn't make it useless. How many of you have a really hard time telling your partner where you want to get dinner? Right? But as soon as somebody suggests a place, say that there's two options, and you're sort of going, I don't really have an opinion one way or another, and someone's like, oh, well, I flip a coin. And then it lands on tails, and you suddenly go, shit, I guess I actually wanted heads. Like, now that there's been a decision made, I guess I knew what I wanted all along, but it wouldn't come forward to my brain and, like, make itself known, and now I'm going to eat at the place I didn't really want to eat. What do I do now? In my case, I will literally tell Ian, and be like, apparently I actually wanted the other one, but not everybody feels confident in doing so. And one of the things that a spirit board can do for you is tell you the thing that part of you knows and the rest of you doesn't, which is useful. Skeptic's Corner. I did the flip the coin example. Is there anything you want to add to the Skeptic's Corner?
Talking to yourself is actually super useful. For anyone who's ever done any form of dialectic therapy, being able to talk to yourself and work stuff out and have different pieces of yourself discussing something is actually a super helpful ability and helps you not lie to yourself about things, which most of us do.
Right.
So
you could pay a therapist $150 to $500 an hour to have a conversation with an aspect of your personality, and I suppose if you have the means to do so, and are more comfortable with doing that, then great. But if you don't have the means or you're not comfortable, I certainly know there are a lot of a neurotypical persons that aren't comfortable seeking mental health care in the United States, then this is a method of talking to a portion of yourself that you're trying to get to respond to your investigations.
Also, if you ask any honest psychic who is a professional and who does tarot readings, spirit board readings, crystal ball readings, whatever, they'll tell you that more than half of their job is being a unlicensed therapist. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it winds up being.
One of the things that we help people do is sort out when they're going like, well, I don't know if they're cheating on me or if it's just that my former partner cheated on me and now I see everything as a sign that I should be distrusting. Okay, well, let's talk to yourself about it. Because some part of you knows what's paranoia and what's I just found underwear in the couch. Like, some part of you knows. One of the things that I've found in doing cunning practices over the last many, many years is that people often know what decision they're going to come to. It's just a matter of talking themselves into it. And you can drag your feet and argue with yourself and beat yourself about the head for 3 months, or you can have a conversation with yourself and be like, get over it. Like, this is happening, move on. And this is one of the methods of doing so. In which case, you would literally do the invocation to communicate with yourself. Now, just like in the crystal ball class I taught a couple days ago, right?
Can I actually add one note to that? This is from a particular flavor of neurodivergent person. There are potential drawbacks to talking to aspects of yourself.
Trauma.
Well, also, so I used to say, and it's still true, that I could talk myself or most other people into or out of anything.
I have watched you talk yourself into doing really terrible things.
Yeah.
And then you've turned to me and been like, was that not okay? It's like, that's not for me to decide, friend.
But
That's...
essentially the relevant part here is that if you have a slightly less empathic or more manipulative side, and you decide to talk to it, you may start manipulating yourself.
There are parts of you
Don't.
that want things that are not good for the rest of you. Now, secondly, just like in the crystal ball class that I taught a couple days ago, you can use this to communicate with a spirit of someone you have loved and lost who is not actually there. Like, sans any belief in ghosts, sans any belief in spirits that persist beyond death. You can absolutely use this tool to communicate with someone who is gone. And I said loved and lost, but hated and lost is valid too.
Known and lost. Known is the relevant part.
There we go. Thank you. Having conversations with someone who is deceased is valuable whether or not you really believe they are there. In the same way that you can get closure from writing a letter that you never intend to send.
Right. Hey, we're right back at therapy.
Yeah. All right. So moving out of the skeptic's corner and into the spiritualist corner. If you do believe that there are beings that exist beyond some kind of veil, separated out from what you create, either if you're in the collective unconscious, that we create the gods and the gods then create us, all right, fine, you created it, but it has an independent existence, right? Or if you're not in that particular,
Then it just has an independent
it has an
existence.
independent existence of some kind, whether you generated it, influenced it, or not. So we are talking to a being, alien, interdimensional being, time traveler,
you're talking to
god,
something
goddess,
that-
demon.
You're talking to something that has an existence that is not 100% dependent on your own consciousness.
There we go. I don't care what you think they are. The same warning goes as I had during the crystal ball session. If there is an existence of some kind beyond our lives, then they outnumber us. If there are independent beings not generated by you, then they have their own agenda. I want you to think of everyone you have ever met. and the different motivations they have had. Whether you're communicating with them in comments on a Facebook page, or whether they're those serial killer letters over there in that glass case. Because serial killers apparently love writing people letters and trying to mess with their heads. I want you to think about any bit of advice you have ever gotten from someone, some of which was very helpful, some of which was well-meaning and completely not helpful, and some of which was deeply damaging. Okay? If you open yourself up to communication with a power that you do not control, it has an agenda, and that agenda might be harmful to you. Depending upon where you fall in the spiritualist corner, a spirit may have no more ability to harm you than to communicate with you. And I see this a lot as given as evidence of, oh, well, they can't really do you any harm. All it can do is talk to you.
I can absolutely do someone harm just by talking to them.
Every year, how many teens take their lives because of bullying? And how much of that bullying is now taking the form of online communication? Talking. What about the damage that's done by gaslighting or emotional abuse? You're going to tell me that that's not harmful?
Also, can I just throw a pop culture reference in there?
Sure.
Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
Like,
That's an excellent example, sir.
think I
Good
need to
job.
say anything else.
On that note, there are also spiritualists who believe that something that you invite to have a presence in your life can do a lot more than talk. And that there's an energy exchange via the use of something like a spirit board where you're sort of feeding back and forth into it and it into you. And depending upon where you fall in this corner, either the energy exchange itself can be damaging because it is draining, or the more power you give them, the more they take. Which is where we get called in to deal with something shaking my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, or something threw all my cups off the shelf, or in one memorable case, my dog hates this house so much that it claws its way out until it leaves bloody streaks on the door.
That was a...
Yeah.
Anyway.
So,
This brings us to the most important thing on any given spirit board.
there will be a word somewhere on a spirit board, farewell or goodbye. It's important. It's important if you're in the skeptic's corner. It is a way of having closure to that conversation. In fact, I encourage you to practice the uses of the word goodbye when you're talking to yourself. Sort of like, okay, goodbye now. I'm done with communicating with this particular aspect today. Because there is a certain power to just going, and I'm done. Instead of having something nagging your attention all day long, saying, hey, I'm not done communicating with you. Hey, I'm not done communicating with you. And believe me, corners of my mind have done that to me.
I don't know what you're talking about. I also invite you to consider the merits of the use of the word goodbye in your day-to-day life, interacting with others. I'm not going to tell you what is right for you to do, but there can be a great deal of power in choosing to end a conversation, not leaving it open, just saying, we're done.
There's
Goodbye.
a new tactic I've noticed in hurtful, harmful online communication where someone has no intention of giving you an honest ability to change their perspective on something. They have no intention of engaging with you in any kind of an honest level. They just want to take up your time, take up your energy, and wear you down on something. So they go, debate with me, communicate with me. Huh?
It's like owning an oddities shop.
Yeah. I really encourage you to practice going, and goodbye now. Farewell, sir. I wish we were better strangers. Just, we're done. In a spiritualist corner, there is a lot of power in using something that everyone has done other than you, over and over and over again. One of the reasons for wafting smoke in a very particular way is how many generations have done that. if you're a believer that there is some kind of an energy to the universe that we're all tapping into, and that we influence it, and in kind it influences us, then the more any person does something over and over and over and over and over and over again, then there's power to it. So you're not just tapping into your own ability to be like, nope, I'm done. You're tapping into every other witch's power to say, nope, I'm done.
So remember that conversation that we just had about in the spiritualist corner, inviting things into your life, giving them power? Telling them to leave your life takes it away. That's why the word goodbye or farewell is the most important one on the board.
Not
People forget
hello,
that step.
goodbye. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys my, is it an analogy or metaphor?
I don't know which one you're using.
The invite someone into your home.
It's a metaphor.
All right, thank you.
It's also an analogy.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I give this metaphor, also an analogy, in every class I teach on these, and whenever someone used to come into Havencraft and be like, are these safe to use? And it drives Ian nuts because he kind of feels like it's an oversimplification, which is why I'm expounding for the course of the class.
It's fine. It kind of is, but it also is a really good place to start.
I want you to think of a spirit board, regardless of whether you're in the skeptics or the spiritualist corner, the same way you would if you were inviting someone into your home, because that's what you're doing. The first thing you do is you clean before they come. If you're in the skeptics corner, the importance of this is the same reason why you clean before you meditate. So there is no distraction keeping you from your mental goal. If you're in the spiritualist corner, you clean partially so that there's no stray energy that is a distraction, and partially so that anything that comes in has nothing to use against you. Everything is under your control, everything is swept and tidy, and you know where everything is. By cleaning, I do literally mean pick up, give yourself as neat a possible a place to work. And I know I am not one of those moms that has a spotless house. I'm never gonna be. And even when I'm picking up to do one of my little everyday rituals, no. I have a place in my home that I will pick up more than the rest of my house. Because if I'm chasing down Alexander to pick up every single one of their Legos every time I want to do a ritual, I will never get to the ritual. Like, know where your limits are, friends. We're not going for one of those magazines where, like, they have the artfully placed knickknacks. It's not happening. On that note, clean before you begin. Have a set space you are proceeding in.
You mentioned physically cleaning. You didn't actually get the cleanse part. You
Oh.
said, I mean clean. She also means cleanse the space energetically.
Didn't I say that?
No.
Oh, oops. Cleanse the space energetically if you're in the spiritualist corner. I don't care how you do this. You could shake holy water in all the four corners of the room. You could walk around wafting cleansing smoke. I will say that although California white sage is not endangered, it is struggling due to the wildfires and the droughts right now, and
Consider using
you
something
may
else.
want to consider using something else. It's getting more expensive. It's a thought. If you are going to do just straight up energetic cleansing, no tools, just remember to actually put the energy in. One of the reasons why you use a tool is as a reminder to the energy to get moving. It's possible to walk around going, I'm cleaning, and not actually do anything. I say as someone who has done that. I'm like, why didn't that work? On that note, so just like if you were going to have guests over, you would pick up. Just like if you were going to have guests over for a particular thing you are doing, you would prepare the space for that event. You want to prepare the space for that event. So say that you were having your friends over for a movie night. You would get out the popcorn, the candy, the sodas, the movies. If you were having... Thanks. If you were having friends over for a fancy dinner, you would get all your dishes out and set up and your table. If you were having over, let's say your boss for coffee and aperitifs, you might prepare a little differently. What's another example? Let's see. You were having the police over. They wanted to interview about something. Would you prepare your house a little differently for the police than you would be for your best friends? Who are you inviting over? that's going to influence how you prepare. Everyone always wants to know, well, do I need a spirit circle for this? How complex of a spirit circle do I need? What kind of protections do I need? Who are you inviting over?
This brings us to an important side note. A lot of people like to do we're just going to open this and see who talks. Okay.
What? That would be
I
like
would be a little-
opening up your door at 3 o'clock in the morning and shouting to the strangers on the street, come on in, it's a party in here!
Now, in fairness, I know people who have actually done that. College.
See, I went, were they actually serial killers? Because that's the question, isn't it? Whenever, like, you're talking about hitchhikers, okay, are we more worried that the hitchhiker is the serial killer or that the car you get into is the serial killer?
I still have no comment on this matter. Second, it would be a little bit hypocritical of me to tell you not to do that, because I have. I also like picking fights.
Ian is the example that we give constantly on don't do what Ian does.
I also actively like picking fights.
So, I'm going to go back to giving this as an example of what not to do. Don't just invite at random. Don't just open up.
And if you decide that you're going to, know what you're getting into, which is you have no idea.
Right. If you're in the skeptic's corner and you make the invitation open to whatever part of yourself wants to communicate, then for all you know, you opened it up to the part of you that really thinks eating the entire cake in one sitting is a great idea, with no control. And as someone who's opened up to the part of me that decided it would be a great idea to break every dish I owned in a fit of rage, like, this is my don't do what Melissa did.
Yeah. There are consequences.
Yes. If you're in the spiritualist corner, then when you open up to... I don't recognize the number.
Okay.
When you open up at random, you are basically inviting whatever you want, not only into your home to influence your life and your family's life if you have a family, but also spiritualist corner. You're inviting it to influence your spirit. More so than if you were having over a friend to chat, but something that can actually influence your energy.
Oh, look, our Rakshasa happened to be floating through the neighborhood. Why? I don't know, but it decided to say hi.
Right? Like, oh, I invited in the Ravasu that lurks on top of my doorway, and now I have a gaping hole in my energy, and gee, I wonder why I only invited in the thing that literally means ravenous hunger. Anyway,
I, again, have no comment on this matter. She's looking at me.
Ian literally invited a Ravasu into our house, which is why he's getting that look.
It worked out.
Anyway, moving right
I fought
along.
with it for a while and now we're friends.
So many of your stories end that way.
Sorry.
So-
I fought with it for a while, now we're on friendly-ish terms and it likes one of my other friends.
Set up
Probably.
accordingly. If you are someone who uses salt circles, use a salt circle. If you use chalk circles, use a chalk circle. If you like doing the 5 dishes of different herbal botanicals, some of which are lit on fire and some of which are liquid, then do that one. That one.
Candles.
Right. If you like a circle of 13 black candles,
Get down with your best
yeah,
self,
I
let me
know
what you're getting
someone
from
who
that.
uses 13 black beeswax pillar candles every time he uses a spirit board. And my question is, how the fuck do you afford that? Because that is really expensive.
Maybe he reuses them?
Right? I don't know. Like, they're expensive.
I know.
It's like $45 a candle.
The point
On that
is,
note,
take appropriate measures when preparing the space.
you want to know what I do? I take my conjure stick and I walk around with it going, I completely control this space. This is my house. Anything that walks into this space answers to me. Most things don't like having to answer to me. So if you're going to come in, you will do what I say, and if you don't, I will make it your problem. And that's what I do.
You're looking at me.
Are you going to share what you do?
It depends on the day.
Right, I've seen you do the bowls of different
Right.
botanicals.
The version that she's thinking of, and the don't do what Ian does version, is basically the equivalent of come have a go if you think you're hard enough. Don't do that. This is only when I really am picking fights is one of my ways of blowing off steam.
And he tries not to go to pool houses and pick fights anymore because we can't afford the bail. So
I have yet to be arrested for doing that. I have...
That's because you're really good at going, officer, I don't know what happened.
I have no comment on this matter. Having said that, don't do that version. A saner version that I do. Sure, I'll go with the... I mean, I don't know if something I stole from a Taoist sorcerer is really
The
sane,
saner version?
But, well, it's essentially claiming the space around me. The sphere around me.
This is part of my personal universe.
As this space is part of... This space is determined by my reality. It gets into the idea that there is sort of a shared universe that all of us are interacting in, and everyone has their own individual universe, which is mostly inside your head, but also sort of the filter through which you experience everything. And that you can expand your personal universe to encompass some space around you as well with practice.
Right. Between 3 inches and 3 feet, if the Princeton Paranormal Research Laboratory is to be believed. That they literally measured it. The bioelectric field that extends beyond the body that everybody has extends between 3 inches and 3 feet.
Or in at least one memorable case, line of sight.
Right. Yeah, they actually studied a person who claimed to be a psychic vampire, and they could basically extend their bubble to the line of their sight. Yeah. Yeah, really interesting photography of that one. Anyway, on that note, moving right along. Once you have prepared your space, invite specifically who you prepared the space for. Do not do open calls. And this is when I tend to get a lot of questions from my students. Okay, but how do I invite it? Well, you can spell its name on the board, and you can do that the Taoist sorcery way and just do it over and over and over and over again until something answers. Or you can say it over and over and over and over again until something answers. You can write out who you're inviting and burn it in a dish, because smoke is seen in a lot of cultures as carrying messages, carrying calls. You can create an offering. And basically say like, hey, this is your offering. If you want it, you have to come and talk to me in order to get it. That one's in common use by paranormal investigators.
Also, people who deal with the good neighbors.
Right. If you are gonna talk to the good neighbors, the friendly souls in the Hollow Hills, do your homework. They have an entirely different method of communicating and an entirely different moral code. And it varies from which cultural version of them you're talking to, so be aware whether you're talking to like the Celt version or the Germanic version. You might not want to talk to the Germanic version until you're a little more experienced.
That begs the question, why?
They tend to be bloodier.
Okay.
There's less of the I'm mostly on your side because it's fun and I want to see what will happen, and there's more of the I am a force of nature that you do not understand, that you must treat with respect, and even if you do treat it with respect, you're probably gonna die. So
Not a good place to start. Got it.
not a good place to start. Like Perkta, the belly slitter that I work with, she comes from the Germanic version. Yeah.
Nice name.
Oh, belly slitter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically, it's never that.
Right. Technically, that's not her name. That's something that you call her because you don't want to say her name. Anyway.
You can also, rather than calling for individuals, call for categories. This would be like inviting your high school reunion class to an event. You are picking out a subset of everyone that exists that you more or less understand the boundaries of and know what is within it, and inviting anything from that subset that wants to show up.
Right. And this works for the Skeptic's Corner, too. You don't have to know specifically what parts of yourself you want to talk to. You could say, I'd like to talk
Not
to the
trauma
parts of
today.
me that hurt. when I try and enter into a new relationship. And that's a pretty broad category. Or you could say, I'd like to talk to the parts of me that drive me to smoke, because I'm trying to stop, and I don't know what's making me pick up the pack, because it's not just addiction. So what's going on here? There's sort of general categories that things fall into. Things I don't recommend you doing general categories with. All the ghosts in your area.
All the ghosts in your family.
All the ghosts in your family. They outnumber your living family by a significant margin. You could say, I want to talk to the spirits in this house. I want to talk to the spirit of the location that I am in. You can use these to talk to a genus loci. Basically be like, hey, spirit of the area I'm in, kind of feels like you don't want me here when I'm here doing rituals. What's up with that? Am I giving you the wrong kind of offering? Or you could take it out to a graveyard at midnight and pick a specific grave. Not the entire graveyard.
They outnumber you.
They outnumber you. I've had some students that have involved 3 o'clock in the morning phone calls with Melissa. You know that thing you told me was a really bad idea? I totally did it, and now I
I'm at
need
the
help.
graveyard, and can you come help?
You had your first 3 o'clock in the morning phone call.
Yeah, although that particular person was intelligent enough that they had already made it to the steps of a church.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to figure out how they could leave the steps of the church safely.
Yeah.
But there's a story.
Yeah.
There's a story there. It's not entirely mine and on camera.
But Ian got to handle his first 3 o'clock in the morning phone call
That was
because,
a couple years ago now.
yeah. Was it really?
Yeah.
No, it was a year ago.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was before?
It was right before the move.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Okay, that was about a year ago.
Okay. On that note, invite who you intend to talk to. Set limits for how they can behave. If you're going to have friends over and they randomly start throwing your belongings around, or they go get into your purse and they take money from it, or they start having sex on your bed, you may tell all your friends to get the fuck out. You may, if they were ever to visit you again, be like, all right, y'all, but we're going to lay down some ground rules. We all have kind of rules for our homes, have rules for your spirit too. Things that you consider a violation. Things that you would banish something for crossing. And unlike Americans having any kind of communication with people around them, be really blunt and upfront about it when you're talking to the spirits. And be like, hey, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, this is what, if you do, I'm done and I'm never talking to you again. And here's the thing. A lot of them will talk to you anyway. Some of them will not. That means you don't want to talk to that person.
Where everyone's got that one friend who ignores it, or acquaintance, who ignores their boundaries, tries to push all their buttons just to see if they can. You don't want to talk to that person.
I recently saw an example
Occasionally
online.
you may have to, but you don't want to.
Where someone basically was like, hey, people who identify as female out in the world, if you start dating cis men, do something for me. And say no to something relatively minor. Say no to the radio station that he insists on putting on. Say no to the restaurant he picks. Say no to going to the concert he wants to go to, and see what happens. And a lot of people got on that post and they were like, this is why people don't trust women, they're so secretly manipulative, why don't they just do what they say? Like, why don't they just do what they want to do? Why would you play these kind of games? And it was kind of like, well, maybe if you stopped killing us, we would communicate more clearly. Or also, you know, maybe we are communicating clearly and then you tell us we're crazy.
Also,
But,
using the word no is not ambiguous communication.
thank you. It was like, why do women play these games? And it's like, saying no is not a game, friend. And I'm a little concerned that you think that me saying no is a game you can win. That says some really damaging things. Did it break, or are we just...
Switch it out.
I have totally sat down in the middle of a college class and had the chair like legs just.
That's on me. That's the one I tried to fix.
No, my back was hurting and I just stretched and then I'm like,
Popped, yeah.
sorry about
I'm glad you didn't hit the ground. Like that could have gone a lot worse. Yeah.
You said no.
Hold on. Follow those instincts.
Just by example.
But
Returning to that for a second.
I recommend this in the spiritualist corner. If you're working with a spirit and you go, all right, I reserve the right to say no at any time, have you respect that no, and to kick you out if you try and violate that no. And it goes, I'm not comfortable with this. I want your full and complete loyalty, and you must do what I say, and you should just trust me. Run, friends. Don't play with gods or demons or I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's an angel. And actually, angels are really
Angels
bad
are
about
bad
this.
Angels are awful for this. They
Angels-
just take everything on faith.
Right, angels and any kind of servant of Yahweh is really big on like, you should trust in Yahweh's designs. He may, strike you blind, kill your entire family, cover you with boils, and kill everything that you own, and you should love him anyway. Yahweh is an abusive husband. Anyway,
Would it be a good idea to share what you say before a seance?
yeah.
like rules,
So before we do a seance, which we generally do with a crystal ball and not with a spirit board, although I have done a seance with a spirit board that was big enough to be an entire table, and it was everyone there.
I may make you one of those one
Yeah.
of these days.
Really popular in the Victorian era seances, seance tables, and likely inspired our current common designs, because some of the older ones don't have like the alphabet. They have specific images, and each image acts as an ideogram, which one of the designs that we have for today, for you making your own, has both the ideograms and the alphabet. Because I find the ideograms a little more helpful than, because like if you have a symbol for cleansing, the thing doesn't have to go CLEAN and make sure every one of those letters comes through clearly. Anyway, moving right along. Before we do a seance, we tend to say, you are not allowed to misrepresent yourself. You're not allowed to pretend to be something that you're not. You are not allowed to harm anyone here. You are not allowed to take any energy that is not freely offered to you. You are not permitted to leave anything behind when you go. You are not permitted to make any changes in the person you are communicating with without their full knowledge and consent. You are not allowed to pressure us into any kind of long-lasting commitment or contract. You must clearly communicate your goals, and you must leave when we tell you to leave.
And I think we added harm by the person's definition, not the spirit.
Right, because there are a lot of things that spirits would do to you that they're like, I'm not harming you, I'm helping you. In the same way that really controlling parents will be like, I'm not harming you, I'm helping you, by violating your privacy and removing you from your social circle and whatever else I'm doing to you. I have a father that belongs to what I would call a fundamentalist, extremist Christian cult. And what he thinks is for my good is absolutely not for my good. And the spirits fall into that too. In fact, kind of more so. One of the things I've noticed, whether you're in the skeptic's corner and this is all we've made these things, or they were independent, is all through human mythology. There are gods and otherworldly powers that say, I know what's best for you. And everyone goes, you know what's best for me. And that never plays out well for the human involved. There's also so many stories of gods coming along and sort of going, I'm going to pick you up and just kind of put you over here. And if you die, then it's okay. There's like 6 million more of you. That thing doesn't really have your best interests at heart. Think about the Trojan War, friends. That didn't go so well for the people in the Trojan War. I'm sure Patroclus had a really wonderful time.
Moving on. Lay down ground rules.
Make sure that you only talk with things that respect them. And then
Have people over.
and kick them out if they cross those lines. And I really mean it. People will talk themselves into continuing because they feel like they're having a genuine experience. And that becomes more important than a safe experience. I've done this. So, like, I'm speaking from experience. I've gone like, this is kind of going great. This is kind of going bad. I'm just going to keep going for 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Nope, 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 nope. And by the time I've hit nope, sometimes I've compromised my own power. I've kind of cut myself off at the knees with my ability to be like, and you crossed that line, get out. Because then the thing can kind of go like, whoa, I crossed it and you didn't mind, which is icky and rapey, and no. But when I was younger, there were definitely times when I let that fly. And I'm encouraging you not to in every aspect of your life. If you sort of get pressured into letting the top half groping go on, and then the person that's groping you goes, but you let me get this far, practice going, no, you know what, just because I let you push a boundary doesn't mean I'm going to let you, like, erase it.
Also, side note, that this is when, in both contexts, it's really useful to have a friend with a knife handy.
Right?
Stabbing a spirit
So-
board works wonders for making things
Oh my
go
gosh,
away.
it does. Or lighting it on fire. Twice. I've had to set fire. There's a reason why I no longer own the really pretty, really intricate ones. I've got these guys. Because this cost me $10. So if I need to, like,
A little more than that.
put
once
it
you
through.
include the toner and the-
All right.
but-
The initial expense for making them can be a little higher, but it's about $10 per one once you get the investment done. And that way you can put it through a wood chipper if you need to.
Now, why would you do that? Should Dubai work?
It should. We're going to talk about when it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
So, have people over. Basic operation of a spirit board.
Right? And I'm going to say 98% of the time, if you're not us and specifically going into houses that already have a spirit that's clinging on and won't leave or is eating the energy of someone in the house, if you're not dealing with, like, we get called in as the witch police.
Right.
So say that somebody threw a house party and the guests won't leave, and they call the cops and are like, hey, my drunk guests won't leave, and you have to deal with the drunk belligerent guests. That's when we get called in. So we get called in the cases where goodbyes don't work.
These are actually, relatively speaking, rare.
It is rare. And one of the ways I've found to make it less rare is to not think about the times when it doesn't work. To really believe with as much of yourself as you can get believing in it that goodbye is enough. That you have the power. And this is kind of a separate series of classes that I teach on claiming your own power, but I'm going to touch on something for a second. The god that I tend to bring up as the example of the worst and biggest bully of all gods, Yahweh, I want you to sort of think about the story of Jonah. Yahweh says, Jonah, I have picked you to be my prophet in the land of Nineveh. And Jonah goes, Yahweh, the Ninevites kill your prophets? This is kind of a known thing. Maybe we should stop prophesying to the Ninevites and let this one go. And Yahweh goes, no, you're going to be my prophet. And Jonah goes, you know, thanks, but no. Yahweh cannot snap his fingers and make Jonah say yes. Instead,
Lots of other things.
he basically bullies him into saying yes by having him be swallowed by a giant fish. Honestly, I don't know why people work with this god. I'm not trying to, like, invalidate. If you're a Christian witch, if you're just Christian, then, you know, well, then I have questions about why you're working with Yahweh when the teachings of Christ are, there are other...
That's a totally different... Right.
All right, so if you're Hebrew and you're one of Yahweh's chosen people, then at least I'm like, oh, friend, you're kind of stuck with him. I'm sorry. On that note, we're interfaith. I should drop this.
Yes, however, that is a matter of record in his own holy book.
Yeah, that's a matter of record. And if you are actually Hebrew instead of Christian, then one of the things that you have is the record of the arguments with Yahweh,
Wait,
because one
let
of the
me-
things that
let me
the
step in here as a terrible, but do. And point out that
bacon, lots of bacon.
it's really tasty. Also, I'm a terrible dude. And point out that, like, at least a third of a rabbi's job involves arguing with Yahweh.
And there are these rabbinical texts that
And-
you can read through, which are not just the rabbis arguing with Yahweh and writing about
and
it,
another third of a
but
rabbi's job is arguing with
other rabbis about the arguments with Yahweh. Because one of the things that they don't teach you if you're Christian rather than a Kabbalistic Hebrew is that Yahweh is only one of the Elohim, and there are many other Elohim, there are many other gods. Yahweh just happens to be the one that the Hebrew are kind of stuck with. If you're Christian, then you should be being educated that Yahweh is one of the Elohim, and that Christ was actually the prophet of Ain, which is who created all the Elohim. But okay. I will eventually do a class on Christian witchcraft. On that note,
I was going to say, at that point you're getting into Coptic, Gnostic, Christian witchcraft specifically.
you mean before they took some of the books out?
Yes.
Yeah. So, if you pay attention, then all through the myths, the gods go, I pick you. And the human goes, no. And they have that power. Now, sometimes the gods are like, I'm going to torment you until you say yes, in which case, the humans who survive tend to seek out a witch. And go, hey, witch, could you help me? This actually happens in the Bible. A king is being tormented by Yahweh and seeks out the advice of a witch. And the witch says, hey, if you want to stop being tormented, do this thing. And it works, kind of.
Works-ish.
But all through the myths, whether you're looking at Irish myth, Egyptian myth, or whatever, then you absolutely have the power to go, I will not do the thing. And they cannot make you. And these are supposed to be the most powerful beings that there are out there. And they have to respond to a single human no. So when you are going to say goodbye, leave, we're done here, that should be enough. If it's not, call in a witch, or you can try these. I like to walk around with a cast iron and hit my cast iron with my broom and literally go, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, you're not allowed here. Alexander has seen me, right? Alexander has seen me do this, and now Alexander has a mini cast iron that is just big enough for Alexander and a mini broom that's just big enough for Alexander. And so when they get frightened by spirits, they also go, get out, get out, get out, get out. And it has the wonderful ability, if you're in the skeptic's corner, of giving a child the belief that they have the power to scare away monsters. If you're in the spiritualist corner, then yeah, they're using iron and a broom. It's gonna get rid of almost anything. Failing that, you can always hit the spirit with the cast iron, which I've totally done.
Moving on. Sweetheart, back to operation.
Yep. So, any other ways for banishing? Because that's where we're at right now.
I know, but we skipped over the how do you actually use it to get messages and communication part.
Oh, no, I was going over the basics, and then I was going to go into some of the details
Okay,
on
then
what tools to use.
we're-
So we're at that part. Okay. If you have one of these, and it has letters or ideograms, whichever one you're using, you tend to get whatever you're going to talk to where you are aware of it. Your awareness will absolutely vary. Some people are super aware. They can see it, smell it, hear it. It's like something is standing right in front of them. This tends to be the one that everyone kind of envies and says, oh, I wish that were me. As someone who has that, it has drawbacks. For one thing, you're never sure if what you're looking at is real. I mean, I have a lot of conversation with Ian where I'm like, hey, can you see that too? So, keep that in mind, friends. And for those of you out there going like, well, how do you know you're not just crazy? I don't.
I do. You are.
Yeah. You can absolutely use a planchette One of the reasons why people like them so much is because they glide smoothly. So there's no drag when you're trying to... if you're going to make one, we're not going over one in today's class. You can absolutely hot glue a marble or a stone to a piece of cardboard. Ian made one once with 2 pieces of howlite
And an antler spur.
glued onto an antler spur. It was really cool.
And then I wrapped the joint with leather. And
yeah.
It worked really well for gliding.
When we sell one on Etsy, that's the planchettes I tend to sell with them. But you can cut one out of cardboard and stick a marble on it. They're not...
They're also not
I
required.
don't use them myself. I use a finger or a pen, or if I'm feeling really, really motivated, a pendulum. I find that a pendulum swings really easily to the different letters, and sometimes my arm will get tugged down onto something that's important, so it literally will like pull on yes, like that is a strong yes. I find that planchettes for me are actually kind of distracting, and it'll end up landing on like 3 letters, and I'm like, what are you, which letter?
So-
And then it's like decoding.
A little bit of history there. The reason that everyone thinks that you should use a planchette is because it shipped with Parker Brothers Ouija board.
They
And
actually
the
weren't in
reason-
common use in the
They
Victorian
were,
boards.
they were not in common use. They're a pain to make with Victorian tools. And
Well, that's because they weren't originally... Okay, so
And
I
the-
said I wasn't
so-
going to go into a lot of anthropological, but...
can I finish that thought first?
Yeah,
though?
sorry.
The primary purpose of it with the Parker Brothers game is to give multiple people doing it the opportunity to put their hands on the same thing. And then you can go, oh, look, and then you can degenerate into arguments about, I'm not pushing it, you're pushing it, I'm not pushing it, you're pushing it. It's part of the gamification. It's not a necessary component.
And the reason for this is that spirit boards and planchettes were originally 2 separate spiritual tools. They weren't used together. Spirit boards, you used your finger or a pen or a stylus, which in particular, one of the most famous psychics, who was Romani, used a, what do they call it? They're used in Shadow Hunters.
Oh. I'll get back to you
What's
on
the
it.
name of that thing?
Not anathema.
No. It's a writing tool. They're
It's a
used
type
to,
of
to
stylus.
clo- put in clay tablets.
Oh, I always call those stylus.
Yeah.
Yeah, no idea.
She used one of those that had, she took out the pen tip and she replaced it with crystal. So she would push it to the different, so it was almost like a wand. She would also do her automatic writing with that in a tablet of wax. So she used the tool to communicate with automatic writing and on her spirit board. The planchette was used to write out different answers. Stella, thank you. She would, planchettes were used, you would write out different answers to a question and then take the planchette and let your hand move you to the answer. It was an entirely different tool, and originally the game companies sold them in 2 separate boxes. The planchette was sold as one tool and the spirit board was sold as one tool, and then they combined them and called them a Ouija board. But it's, some people really like them. I don't. If I do use one, I use one that way where I write out the different answers, but I found that a pendulum works better for me for that. I don't have the ability to make planchettes today because I really wasn't thinking about the fact that some people might like them. We may just do a separate class on making planchettes and using them in that fashion, the original fashion they were used for. So, I encourage you to keep a pen and paper nearby and write as they say what they're saying, because it's really annoying to get halfway through a word or halfway through a sentence and realize that you have no idea what they just told you. It's the same concept. Have any of you picked blocks?
Yes.
Write down the combinations as you go. As soon as it clicks, you're gonna forget what you're on. Okay, my family taught me to practice picking locks.
So it's a different class.
That is it. But essentially, it boils down to the fact that human memory is fallible. It is possible to train yourself to store the information in memory as it comes. Unless you have done so, write it down.
Yep. Use a
If you
spirit
want to
board.
write it, so that's a whole different class.
Use a spirit board that responds well to you. That could be printing a piece of paper up that has the alphabet on it. Make sure you have the alphabet yes, no, and goodbye is my recommendation. That could be printing out some of the tarot cards that you feel are particularly relevant to your circumstances and letting your fingers go over
In fact, if
those.
you happen to have a felt-topped table, you can use a tarot deck as your spirit board and just lay out the cards that you think are likely to be relevant for this situation.
And then let
And
your in fact, a lot of people use the Lenormand deck as a spirit board on a felt top table.
What?
Yeah, well, that's what the Grand Tableau. Yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
that's one of the things the Grand Tableau is used for. I have also absolutely scribbled one on a piece of paper in what I considered a spiritual emergency, and like fetched a pen, scribbled it out, and let my pen guide me. So they do not have to be fancy. I do recommend, like, if you really like the one that's got the crappy vinyl and has like the black cat printed on it or the owl printed on it, then use that. Nobody has to. It does not have to be like, oh, I inherited this from my great grandmother who performed seances in New Orleans for, like, no. Use whatever works for you. And I know I give the Ouija board a lot of shit, but if you want a Ouija board, get a Ouija board and use that. Just know how. Lastly, have whatever helps you understand that it's done. Not just goodbye, but like, okay, now the spirit board goes back in its box.
Right.
Now I blow out my candle. It's the same way if you have guests. The party's not really done till all the cans are picked up and thrown away. If you're having spiritual guests, you're not really done till everything is cleaned up, put away, and you have cleansed again. So I'm going to run you through the steps sort of one more time. Clean. Invite over only specific things that you know will respect your rules. Have rules that everyone clearly understands and have been communicated and every party has agreed to. Have a set duration and a set area in which you practice that is set up according to your needs. Make sure that when things are done, they're done clearly. Kick out anything that doesn't follow the rules. Put everything away. Clean up. Same way as if you have guests. All right? That